Hello everyone. I want you to think back to your childhood. Remember watching Disney movies? The hero always wins, right? Goodness triumphs all, evil is defeated, and we're left feeling like the world makes sense. But did you ever find yourself listening to a villain and thinking, they have a point. Not about their evil plans, but about something they said about how the world works. Like Scar's observation, life's not fair, is it? Or Ursula's blunt truth, the men up there don't like a lot of blabber. Or Mother Gothel's warning that the world is dark and selfish and cruel. These moments stay with us because they contain uncomfortable truths. Today we're going to explore why. We're going to listen to what Disney villains are telling us, not about being evil, but about being human in an imperfect world. This isn't about excusing villainy. It's about understanding why these characters resonate across generations. They represent the parts of ourselves we're taught to suppress. Our cynicism, our awareness of injustice, our recognition that life doesn't always reward the good. Disney villains are right about how the world works, but wrong about how to respond to that knowledge. They see the system clearly. They understand power dynamics. They recognize that effort doesn't guarantee reward. Where they fail is in their response. They let awareness curdle into resentment, clarity into cruelty. For the next few minutes, we'll journey through these complex characters, unpack what they get right, understand why their response goes wrong, and explore how we can integrate their uncomfortable truths without losing our humanity. Let's begin where every villain starts, observation. Every villain starts with the hero's journey falters. Heroes begin with hope. Villains begin with observation. Villains are watchers. They notice who gets rewarded, who gets ignored, who suffers in silence, and they see patterns early. This awareness isn't evil. It's often accurate, but it is dangerous. Because once you truly see how power moves, how systems operate, you face a choice. Integrate that knowledge with integrity, or let it ferment into bitterness. Most Disney villains chose bitterness. Now, let's start with Scar. Scar isn't physically strong, but he is mentally sharp. He sees what no one questions. Leadership is inherited, not earned. The circle of life is presented as natural law, but it's really a political structure. Scar isn't wrong about the structure. He's wrong about the solution. His tragedy is intellectual stagnation. He understands power, but not responsibility. He teaches us that understanding power without understanding responsibility turns intelligence into bitterness. We now have Ursula. Ursula never lies. She tells people the price, just your voice. It's a transaction laid bare. Power in exchange for authenticity. How many of us make similar bargains? Stay quiet to avoid conflict? Compromise values for advancement? Shrink to fit in? Ursula represents transactional living. She knows that power gained through self-betrayal always costs more than it gives. We have Gaston. Gaston presents as ideal, strong, admired, but beneath is profound insecurity. His identity depends on being validated. When Belle refuses him, it's annihilation of his constructed self. He teaches us that when self-worth is built on external validation, rejection feels like existential violence. Then we have Jafar. Jafar sees something crucial. Merit doesn't matter in Agrabah's system. Power goes to those with the right bloodline or those who manipulate the Sultan. Aladdin, despite his character, only gains access through magical deception. Jafar recognizes the hypocrisy but responds with more hypocrisy. He wants to be Sultan, not to reform the system, but to benefit from it. Therefore, Jafar teaches us that recognizing systematic corruption doesn't justify becoming corrupt yourself. These villains see aspects of reality clearly, but their response reveals their tragic flaws. Recent Disney villains reflect contemporary anxieties in striking ways. In The Incredibles, Syndrome sees what no one else acknowledges. Superheroes are born, not made. There's inherent inequality. His line, "When everyone's super, no one will be," reveals a desire for leveling through technology, not true equality. Syndrome represents a Silicon Valley mindset. Everything can be engineered, even greatness. In Dr. Facilier, we see that he understands systematic disadvantage. He knows the game favors old money. His solution? Deal with dark forces. Get power without the hard work of genuine change. Facilier represents the shortcut temptation when legitimate paths seem blocked. With Mother Gothel entangled, Gothel's philosophy, protection through control. The world is dark and selfish and cruel. She's not entirely wrong. The world can be harsh. But her response creates the very harm she claims to prevent. Gothel teaches us when we let awareness of danger justify controlling others, we become the danger. In Wish, King Magnifico represents a fascinating modern villain, the leader who genuinely believes he knows what's best for everyone. He protects wishes, not to be cruel, but because he believes people can't handle their own dreams. He's right that some dreams can be dangerous. However, he's wrong in believing he should be the sole arbiter of what people deserve. These villains show Disney's evolving understanding of villainy. Less mustache-twirling evil, more tragically flawed individuals responding poorly to real iniquities. Now let's look at female villains and their gendered truths. Female Disney villains reveal particularly sharp truths about gender, power, and aging in society. With Cruella de Vil in 101 Dalmatians, Cruella's obsession isn't just about fur. It's about maintaining a certain image in a world that values women for youth and beauty. Her extreme fashion represents the pressure women face to maintain appearances at any cost. She's right that society judges women harshly on appearance, but she's wrong in externalizing that judgment onto innocent creatures. With Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty, before her redemption arc in later films, Maleficent represents scorned power. She's not invited to a celebration, so she curses a baby. Extreme? Absolutely. But her reaction speaks to how society often excludes powerful women, then punishes them for being difficult. Maleficent teaches us about the danger of marginalizing powerful figures. They don't just go away quietly. With the evil queen in Snow White, her mirror, mirror on the wall, the queen's obsession with being the fairest reveals how women are pitted against each other in patriarchal systems. Her worth depends on being better than other women, particularly younger ones. She's right that aging women lose social value in many societies, but she's catastrophically wrong in her solution. Then we have Lady Tremaine in Cinderella. Tremaine represents the woman who has learned to work within a corrupt system rather than challenge it. She marries for security, teaches her daughters to do the same, and sees Cinderella's hope as naive and dangerous. She's right that the world can crush idealistic girls. However, she's wrong in becoming an instrument of that crushing. These female villains show how systematic pressures around beauty, age, and power and security can twist perception and justify cruelty. Let's move on to the psychology of villainy and why we can relate. We relate to villains because they voice what polite society demands we silence. Heroes operate on hope. Villains operate on observation, as I've mentioned before. Heroes believe in fairness. Villains know fairness is often the exception. Now we have The Hunchback of Notre Dame, where Judge Claude Frollo, who is one of Disney's most psychologically complex villains because he's aware of his own hypocrisy. In Hellfire, he sings about desire, guilt, and self-justification. He sees his corruption and rationalizes it through moral authority. Furlough shows the danger of people who wield systematic power while believing themselves morally superior. Then we have Hades in Hercules. Hades represents the corporate middle manager of mythology. He's stuck in a job he hates, watching less competent people get promoted, who he sees as Zeus. Now, he's right about workplace unfairness, but he's wrong in trying to burn the whole company down. Now, why do these characters resonate? It's because they represent our shadow sides, the part that recognizes that life isn't fair, the part that's tired of playing by rules others ignore, the part that notices who really holds power, the part that wonders if being good is getting us anywhere. Villains give voice to our quiet disillusionments. They are the ID to the hero's superego. But here's the crucial distinction. Villains fail not in perception, but in response. They see truth and weaponize it. They recognize injustice and perpetuate it. The most dangerous people aren't purely evil. They're disillusioned idealists who stop believing goodness mattered. Now here's how we can integrate these lessons into holding truth without losing our humanity. So what do we do with this uncomfortable awareness? How do we integrate the villain's insights without becoming villains? Integration means 1. Accepting that the world is unfair without becoming cruel. 2. Learning how power moves without worshipping it. 3. Protecting our voice without trading our values. And 4. Building awareness without losing empathy. Imagine a workplace where the most successful people aren't the most competent, but the most political savvy. The villain's response: I'll play dirtier than everyone. The hero's response: I'll work harder and hope someone notices. The integrated response: I'll develop political savvy while maintaining integrity. I'll understand the game without letting it change my core. This is maturity. This is what villains never achieve. Let's apply some specific villain insights. When you notice inherited privilege, like Scar, instead of resentment, work to create systems where merit matters. When tempted to trade authenticity for approval, like Ariel and Ursula, identify non-negotiable parts of yourself and protect them fiercely. When feeling worth depends on external validation, like Gaston, cultivate intrinsic self-worth no rejection can destroy. Then when seeing systematic corruption, like Jafar, work for reform rather than benefiting from corruption. When facing age-based discrimination, like the evil queen in Snow White, challenge beauty standards rather than competing with them. The goal isn't naive optimism or cynical pessimism. The goal is clear-eyed kindness, to see the world as it is and still choose to make it better. Now, how do we apply these lessons practically? 1. Cultivate awareness without obsession. Notice power dynamics, but don't let them consume you. Set mental boundaries. 2. Develop your voice without losing values. Practice speaking up in low-stakes situations. Build the muscle of authentic expression. 3. Study power without seduction. Understand how influence works, but regularly check motivations and intentions. Power to serve or to dominate. 4. Acknowledge unfairness without justification. When you see others exploiting systems, use it as data, not permission to do the same. 5. Find communities that value integrity. Build communities where people support each other's growth with integrity. 6. Recognize your shadow. Acknowledge the parts of yourself that resonate with villains. Understand their concerns without acting on their impulses. 7. Create alternative systems. When you identify unfair structures, work to create better ones rather than exploiting or lamenting the existing ones. This is conscience integration. Take the villain's clarity and combining it with the hero's heart, creating a third way, grounded hope. As we wrap up, Disney villains serve as warnings, not guides. They show us who we become when we embrace truth without wisdom, gain awareness without compassion. Next time you watch a Disney movie, listen closely. Not for evil plans to emulate, but for truth to integrate. Notice what the villain gets right, then notice where the response goes tragically wrong. These characters survive across generations because they teach us about the human condition. They remind us that awareness alone is incomplete. It must be paired with compassion, responsibility, commitment to something larger. My invitation? Try to become the person who sees a system clearly but works to improve it, who understands power but uses it ethically, who recognizes unfairness but responds with generosity anyway. That's how we write a better story than either hero or villain imagined possible. Thank you for listening. Until next time, may you see clearly and choose wisely.